Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet shrinvatam svakata krishna punya shravana kirtanaha ridyantasto hyabhadrani fitunoti suritsatam nashta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya Bhagavatyutamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So good morning, dear devotees, as we continue from our reading of Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam. We're in a very interesting section of the Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 19, Text 15 today. Essentially continuing on with hearing about the killing of the demon Hiranyaksha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Vrikneshva Shule Bahuda Harina Hare. Shule Bahuda Harina. Pratyeja Vishtinamuro Vibhutimat. Pravrida Rosha Sakatora Mushtina. Nadam prarityan taradiyata suraha. Vrikne svashule bahura harina hare. Pratyecha vishtirnam uro vibhutimat. Pravrita Rosha Sakatora Mushtina. Nadan Prarityan Taradiyata Sura. Vrikneshva Shule Bahuda Harina Hare. Pratyecha Vishtirnam Uro Vibhutimat. Pravrida Rosha Sakatora Mushtina. Nadan Prarityan Taradiyata Sura. Vrikne Svashule Bahuda Harina Hare. Pratyecha Vishtirnam Uro Vibhutimat. Pravrita Rosha Sakatora Mushtina. Nadan Prarityan Taradiyata Sura. Vrikne Svashule Bahudharina Hare. Pratyeta Vishtinam Uro Vibhutiman. Pravrita Rosha Sakatora Mushtina. Nadam Prarityan Taradiyata Sura. Vrikne Sashule Bahurarina Hire. Pratyeta Vishtinam Uro Vibhutiman. Pravrita Rosha Sakatora Mushtina Nadam Prarityan Taradiyata Sura Vriknesha Sule Bahurharina Hare Pratyeta Vishtinam Uro Vibhutima Pravrida Rosha Sakatora Mushtina Nadam Prarityan Taradiyata Sura Vriknesha Sule Bahurharina Hare Pratyeta Vishtinam Uro Vibhutimat Pravrida Rosha Sakatora Mushtina Nadam Prarityan Taradiyata Sura. Word for word. Vrikne, when cut. Svashule, his trident. Bahura, to many pieces. Adina, by the Sudarshan Chakra. Harahe, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pratyeta, after advancing towards. Vishtirnam, broad. Uraha, chest. Vibhutimat, the abode of the goddess of fortune. Pravrida, having been increased. Roshaha, anger. Saha, hiranyaksha. Katora, hard. Mushtina, with his fist. Nadan, roaring. Praritya, after striking. Antaridiyata, disappeared. Asuraha, the demon. Translation and divine purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanadavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The demon was enraged when his trident was cut to pieces by the discus of the personality of Godhead. He therefore advanced towards the Lord and, roaring aloud, struck his hard fist against the Lord's broad chest, which bore the mark of Srivatsa. Then he went out of sight. Purport. Srivatsa is a curl of white hair on the chest of the Lord, which is a special sign of his being the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In Vaikuntha Loka, or in Goloka Vrindavan, the inhabitants are exactly of the same form as the personality of Godhead. But by this Srivatsa mark on the chest of the Lord, he is distinguished from all others. Om Jnanati Mirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Tadati Svavadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Sam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Garadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Good morning, dear devotees. This is a wonderful opportunity to glorify the Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam. So in the association of the predecessor Acharyas, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, we pray for blessings, for mercy from Sri Sri Radha Gopinath, Sri Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra, Sri Sri Gauranitai, so we can say the right things in the right mood for the proper glorification of this Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam. So today, as all days in Krishna consciousness, is a wonderful festival. So we've had this past week, as we know in Krishna consciousness, every word is a song, every step is a dance, and every day is a festival. So this is the Saturday in which the culmination of the week. So far this week on Thursday we had Guru Panim, we had Sanatan Goswami's disappearance, and we also had Bhakti Charu Swami's disappearance Tirubhav, and we had the great, wonderful situation where Ramai Swami paid beautiful dandavats to Srila Prabhupada and gave us his divine association. So you might say, well, what day is today? Well, today is the preceding day for Gopal Bhatta Goswami's disappearance. So in Vrindavan, Gopal Bhatta Goswami is very highly loved and adored by all the Brajvasis for his wonderful manifestation of the Radharaman deity. So it's his his disappearance day festival starting tomorrow, and it lasts for 3 days. And it's a big festival where all the Mahants from all around Vrindavan come down to the Radharaman temple, and they chant the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's a Gopal Bhatta Goswami Satakam, which is 100 verses glorifying Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and every day for 3 days they sit there and chant this Gopal Bhatta Goswami Shatakam, 100 verses glorifying Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So it's very interesting when you look into the life of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, because he had a tremendous love for Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he was born in a very highly exalted family, such that his father was Venkata Bhatta and his uncle was Prabodhananda Sarasvati. So if you look at Gaura Ganadesh Dipika, which is the who's who guide of Krishna consciousness, who appeared in Lord Chaitanya's Leela, so essentially Prabodhananda Sarasvati is originally Tunga Vidyasaki, one of Srimati Radharani's Ashtasakis, and so he manifests as Prabodhananda Sarasvati. And then you might ask, well, who is Gopal Bhatta Goswami in Radha Krishna Leela? And Guna Manjari, and also a representation of Ananga Manjari, or the younger sister of Srimati Radharani. So therefore it's a very auspicious time to glorify Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And indeed, we're reminded on Thursday was Guru Purnima. And there's a bit of a question mark is in ISKCON. Do we celebrate Guru Purnima? And then Giriraj Swami had a beautiful photo of Srila Prabhupada on the day of Guru Purnima, glorifying Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So Guru Purnima is the appearance day of Vyasadeva, and so therefore it's an opportunity for all of us to glorify our Shiksha Gurus, both manifest and unmanifest, past and present, and live our lives according to their dictations. Indeed, overnight I had the great glories of being able to see a beautiful festival for Radha Govinda Maharaj, where they engaged all the foot bathing ceremony, and the devotees had the Charanamrita of Radha Govinda Maharaj, much following in the footsteps of the predecessor acharyas in order to glorify the Guru on this wonderful day. So the manifestation of Radharaman deity is not like other deities. It's not like a hand-carved deity. It's self-manifest out of the desire of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami, on Nrsimha Chaturdasi, he heard the beautiful story of Prahlad Maharaj crying out for Nrsimhadev because he was being terrorized by Hiranyakashipu. And so as a result of that, the Nrsimha deity came from the pillars and bifurcated the chest of Hiranyakashipu. So in the same way, Gopal Bhatta Goswami heard this, and he thought, well, I would like to have my own deity manifest. And previously he'd gone on pilgrimage to the Kali Gandaki river, and he had 12 shilas, 12 shalagram shilas, and one of them was a Damodar shila. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami, on the night of Nrsimha Chaturdasi, exactly 480 years ago, which is in 1542, Nrsimha Chaturdasi, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he said to his Damodar Shila, if you don't manifest that threefold bending form of Krishna, then I'll jump in the Jamuna river and I'll drown myself. So the very next day, the Damodar Shila formed a beautiful threefold bending form, which we know even to this day is the Radharaman deity in Vrindavan. And so Gopal Bhatta Goswami established the worship because he was previously from the Ramanuja Sampradaya. And so Ramanuja Sampradaya is very meticulous in their fastidious worship of the deity. So if you look at the deity guidelines for the Ramanuja Acharya, it's very, very in-depth, and nothing can be missed. Everything has to be on time. So over 480 years, the deity worship has followed this standard of 9 milk sweets 3 times a day. There's various timings for prasadam offerings, and the rituals are to be followed with meticulous detail, because that's what Gopal Bhatta Goswami had the desire for, particularly in the Hari Bhakti Vilash, which is seen as the guidebook for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, irrespective of if individuals are Ram Bhaktas worshipping Lakshmi Narayana, then the Hari Bhakti Vilash provides all the precise shastric rituals for everyone to follow. So it's essential, when you go back to Ramanujacharya, he had some very beautiful teachings. So there's a famous Leela where Ramanujacharya was walking along the banks of the Kaveri river, and he was there with a few of his disciples, and he was eating an orange, and then he put the orange peel and he threw it in the river Kaveri, at which point a fish just took a slight bite, a nibble of this orange, on the spot, formed a forearm form and went back to Lakshmi Narayana in Vaikunta. So then Ramanujacharya explained to his disciples, this is the desire that we have to have as aspiring devotees, that even if there's a slight fragment of mercy, a slight fragment of prasadam, we have to have that sincere, strong desire, that lolyam, that greed, in order to attain our spiritual bodies and go back home, back to Godhead. So he famously coined the phrase, familiarity breeds contempt. So every day we take prasadam, it's the Lord's remnants, and that has the capacity for us to experience our ecstasy, hairs standing on end, but it's the familiarity we have with the deities, the familiarity we have with the prasadam, that doesn't allow us to automatically transmigrate back home, back to Godhead. So in today's verse, we hear about the enraged demons. So it's explaining that demons have this capacity for anger and becoming enraged, particularly when one of their so-called belongings gets destroyed, much in the case where it was the trident of Hiranyaksha that was destroyed by the Sudarshan Chakra of Varaha. So the demons have this belief that they are the proprietors, they own everything, and so therefore they have no conception that everything belongs to Krishna. As we understand from the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells us very beautifully, Nirmamo nirahankara yomad bhakta me priyaha. So if we have this no sense of proprietorship, Krishna owns everything and no false ego, then we can truly become very dear to Krishna. So in today's verse, we hear this enragement. So it occurs quite a lot of times. The demons becoming enraged is a very regular occurrence. And so this is as a result of their pride, arrogance, conceitedness, harsh speech, ignorance, and anger. So these qualities belong to those of demoniac nature. So one of the times we see this is even in our very own Indra. So Indra was very much enjoying the Indra Puja of the gopis of Vrindavan. So every year they would have an Indra Puja and so many whole feasts and singing and dancing for the glory of Indra as a result of his designation of this Indra Puja. So then the young boy Krishna turns to his father and he says, well, actually, there's someone who's a better recipient of all this puja and offerings and sacrifice. We should give it to Govardhan, because we know there's a beautiful statement. Krishna is the recipient of all austerities. He's the recipient of all yajna. All sacrifices are for Krishna. And he Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, he owns everything, and Suridam Sarva Bhutanam, he's the well-wishing friend of all living entities. So in Indra's own word, he says, he is nothing but a child, and by believing this child, they have enraged me. So Indra is becoming very enraged as a result of the decision to make the Govardhan Puja instead of the Indra Puja. So then as a result of that, he sent the Samvartaka cloud to destroy and drown all the inhabitants of Vrindavan. So this was the mood of Indra, at which point so Krishna obviously lifts up Govardhan Hill, much to the love and adoration for all the residents of Vrindavan, and this is the chance that all the residents of Vrindavan have to be together with Krishna under literally one roof or the umbrella of Govardhan Hill. So the enragement also occurs in lots of other situations. We see Jagai and Madai, they became enraged. Lord Nityananda was famous for preaching the glories of Lord Chaitanya. And he would go into all the streets and he'd beg everyone, please, I beg you, I will become yours. I give myself to you if you just chant the holy names of the Lord. And then so he came across Jagai and Madai, and it's explained that they were not only drunkards, but they were also meat eaters, woman hunters, dacoits, and sinners of all description. So Lord Nityananda is trying to preach to Jagai and Madai. They became enraged, sent him away, and Lord Nityananda had this real capacity that he really wanted to preach the message of Lord Chaitanya, so he came back, and then out of their anger and enragement, they threw an earthen pot and cracked it on Lord Nityananda's skull. And so as a result of that, Lord Chaitanya appeared, not wanting to see his own brother become hurt in any way. As we know, Paritaranaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam dharma samstapanataya sambhavami yuge yuge. So Krishna manifests to protect his devotees and to annihilate the miscreants. So this annihilation of the miscreants aspect, he pulls out his Sudarshan chakra, he's ready to cut off the heads of Jagai and Madai, and then Lord Nityananda, which we know is an ocean of mercy, and he's purely there to pick up the fallen conditioned souls from this age by engaging them in the Sankirtan Yajna. So he stopped Lord Chaitanya and he said, please give them a chance. We can get them to chant the holy names of the Lord. Now is not the time to take off their head. When you manifest as the Kalki avatar, that's the time when you can cut everyone's head off. But now's not the time. So Lord Chaitanya paused with the Sudarshan chakra and then so dealt with it by trying to get the Jagai and Madai to chant the holy names of the Lord. We also mentioned previously the enragement of Hiranyakashipu. This was predominantly because Hiranyakashipu would say to Prahlad, what have you learnt today in the ashram? Thinking, because this is a demoniac ashram, and Prahlad said, the duty of every man is to take shelter of a pure devotee and must become eligible to understand Krishna consciousness. So you can imagine his demoniac father, what? I didn't tell them to teach you this. Who's teaching you this? So Hiranyakashipu was enraged and he ordered his attendants, have Prahlad killed, throw him underneath the hoof prints of elephants, have him boiled in water, throw him off a cliff. So many things. They tried to kill him many thousands of ways, but they were unsuccessful because of the protection of Krishna. It's also interesting when we look at the enragement. There's other situations, as we know, because Brahma is not on the level of Vishnu Tattva, like similar to us, we're on the level of Jiva Tattva, but Brahma is on that level where he can become bewildered. So even after fathering his own daughter, he became bewildered because he wanted to enjoy with her, which aroused the anger of Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva charged at Lord Brahma for trying to enjoy with his own daughter, and then this is the enragement of Lord Shiva. And so then it's explained, Brahmaji fled in fear as soon as he saw the trident of Lord Shiva. Secondly, there's an interesting enragement which occurs. There was a demon by the name of Vidyunmali. So he, as a result of his austerities and penances, we know that even the demons know to practice austerity and penances. So he was gifted with a glowing golden airplane. So this golden glowing airplane had the capacity to even light up the night sky. So, you can imagine, then Surya Dev, he becomes enraged. Who's doing my service? I'm supposed to be the sun god. When the sun comes up on my order, I light up the whole world, and all of a sudden there's this demon flying around in a golden airplane and lighting up the whole night sky. So he became angry. And so then it's interesting, so he melted this airplane with one of his sun rays, which also enraged Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva then attacked the sun god, and then there's a beautiful place we can go on pilgrimage now, which is known as Lolarka, which is the place where the airplane crashed into Kashi, Varanasi. So there's so many enragement, there's so many situations for anger. And so we have to, as devotees, we have to overcome this anger and overcome this negative demoniac characteristics, which is very beneficial for our Krishna consciousness. It's explained that anger actually has the capacity to reduce our immune system. It decreases our ability to communicate. It decreases our ability to form loving relationships. So it's very important to overcome this anger. So then an interesting aspect of this enragement that we're speaking of was Bhrigu, because he decided to test. He's the son of Lord Brahma and the brother of Lord Shiva. So Bhrigu decided to test, how can I enrage people? Children do this sort of thing. They say, I wonder how I can make my parents angry, or I wonder how they can, cause catastrophe. And so it's interesting because if we look at Jayananda Prabhu, because he was the temple president, Prabhupada already said he's the first saintly person in ISKCON. Then Mahatma Prabhu was in that temple at the time, and he said literally they used to talk to each other, how can we get Jayananda angry? Because he was so tolerant, he was never said a harsh word about anyone. So then they'd say, okay, let's wake him up in the middle of the night, throw water on his bed or something like that. Still, Jayananda was so tolerant, he never had this capacity to get angry ever. So Bhrigu Muni also wanted to test his Lord's tolerance. So he went to Lord Brahma, had association with Brahma, and then failed to offer Brahma a seat, which is very much a cause for Brahma's anger. So Brahma had this huge anger, but then he bit his lip, he didn't say anything. Physically he changed as a result of not being offered a seat, but he didn't say anything because Bhrigu was his son. Now interestingly, because Bhrigu Muni didn't offer Brahma a seat, to this day, even in Bhaktivedanta Manna, Srila Prabhupada said, always offer Lord Brahma a seat. So there's a vacant seat there in Bhaktivedanta Manna for where Lord Brahma can, at any time of the day, any place, come and sit down. It's just an interesting corollary. So Bhrigu suppressed his anger. Then Bhrigu Muni decided to go and test this out with Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva, you know, he lives in Kailash in the crematorium ghat, and his body is covered with the ashes of so many crematorium fires. So then Shiva sees his brother Bhrigu and says, "Here, give me a hug," which then Bhrigu Muni rejected him. And then so this rejection was enough to give Lord Shiva so much anger. He pulled out his trident. He was about to, throw his trident at Bhrigu Muni, but then his wife Parvati stopped him, interceded and pacified her husband. So then Bhrigu was thinking, these are very highly exalted personalities. Lord Brahma is extolling the virtues of Lord Vishnu. He's the first person. Lord Shiva has 55 qualities of Narayana, 55 qualities of Krishna. So which is that one personality which is not going to be enraged as a result of my trepidations or my idiosyncrasies? So then Bhrigu Muni approaches Lord Narayana. And so Lord Narayana is there laying on the ground, and his wife Lakshmi Devi is massaging his feet, and Bhrigu Muni kicks Narayana. And then interestingly, Narayana says the most beautiful thing: "Please sit down and rest a while. Kindly forgive us, dear Master, for not noticing your arrival." So this is God, so tolerant, so loving, Suridam Sarvabhutanam, friendly to every living entity. Even if we kick him, even if we say harsh words, he still loves us. He'll still be humble. He'll still demonstrate this quality of humility. And he's saying, kindly forgive us. We didn't notice your arrival. So it's so beautiful. And then this is where it's explained that Bhrigu Muni had the realization of God consciousness, of Krishna consciousness. So as talking about the opulences, Lord Shiva, Sadashiva, has 55 of the opulences. Lord Narayana and Lord Vishnu have 60 opulences. Then there's 64. So there's 4 opulences which are only present in Krishna, which is the Prema Madhurya, the Rupa Madhurya, the Leela Madhurya, and finally the Venu Madhurya. So the sweetness of Krishna's flute is only present there in Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Leelas of Krishna are only present in the personality of God, Krishna. And the Rupa, the form, the threefold bending form that, Gopal Bhatta Goswami was crying out to see that threefold bending form. Because Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he grew up in Ranganath temple near Kaveri River. And in my research, I was understanding from Bir Krishna Goswami that it's actually what's called an isthmus. So what happens is when there's a road leading out to an island, it's called an isthmus. So this is the Ranganath temple in the Kaveri River. And so that's where Gopal Bhatta Goswami and his father Venkata Bhatta and Prabodhananda Saraswati grew up with their Krishna consciousness. So it's interesting also today we're hearing about this concept of the Srivatsa. So this on the chest of Krishna is the insignia of Srivatsa. So it's very beautiful when we go into an analysis of this Srivatsa. It's explained even in the Dwapara Yuga, Krishna appears, he is decorated with the Kaustuba jewel and marks of Srivatsa. It's indicating that he's on the level of Vishnu Tattva. And so much so that he loves his devotees, that he names a very highly elevated devotee, Srivatsa Pandit, who's the 25th branch of Advaita Acharya. Also, it's explained that this Srivatsa attracts thousands of damsels of Vraja, and it's the Srivatsa alone which makes all these goddesses of fortune become maidservants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's interesting when we look at Krishna's magnanimity, his wonderful compassionate nature, his ability to love and adore all the residents of Vrindavan. Because as we were talking before, Brahma has the capacity to become bewildered. So in Brahma's bewilderment, he decided to kidnap the cowherd boys and the calves. So Brahma kidnapped the cowherd boys and calves, put them in a cloud, and they were in mystic slumber. And so as a result of Krishna's desire not to disturb the minds of any of the residents of Vrindavan, what he did was he manifested one form for every single cowherd boy, every single calf that had been kidnapped, so that they could ordinarily go back to their mothers, go back to their fathers, go back home, and there wouldn't be any disturbance at all. So what's interesting in the mark of the Srivatsa, every single child that had been kidnapped now had that mark of Srivatsa on his chest. So the Madhumangal form that was sleeping in mystic slumber in Brahma's cloud now was Vishnu Tattva. So Krishna manifested a form, he had the Srivatsa form on his chest, which really made the loving feelings for the residents of Vrindavan grow even more for their own son, because Krishna was manifesting their form, and the residents of Vrindavan loved Madhumangal, Sridham, Raktak, and so many of the other cowherd boys, because now it was Krishna in that form. So this is the Vishnu Tattva expanding according to time, place and circumstance. Also the mention of the Srivatsa, because when Krishna was bathing into the Jamuna River, or going into the Jamuna River to sort out the Kaliya demon, it's explained that Krishna swam underneath the water and came face to face with the Kaliya demon, and Kaliya actually saw the Srivatsa mark on Krishna's chest, which further enraged Kaliya even more to want to kill him. It was the Srivatsa sign, and also Krishna's beautiful face, which really enraged the Kaliya serpent even more. So this Srivatsa symbol is very much relevant and very much symbolic in a lot of the killing of the demons. Even when Kaliyavana saw Krishna in the marketplace and he started hurling out abusive words, he started that harsh speech that is the quality of the demons, Kaliyavana was speaking to Krishna in this way, even though he saw the Srivatsa sign on the chest. So the demons know that Krishna is Vishnu, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but it serves this function of even enraging them even more. So Kaliyavana hurled out this abuse, and Krishna runs off, because we know that Krishna is quicker than the quicker, faster than the fastest, and he has this capacity to avoid any demon, being omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. So then as we go further into the story, Kaliyavana runs into a cave which Krishna is hiding into, and Muchakunda has this great benediction that whoever wakes him up after his sleeping, he will burn to ashes. So he burns Kaliyavana to ashes, and then the first thing after Kaliyavana has been liberated from his treacherous demoniac life, he then sees Krishna, and it's the first, he looks at particularly his chest mark with the Srivatsa and the Kaustubha gems. So it's really, every time Krishna sees a demon or there's a very auspicious time, he shows this Srivatsa sign on his chest. So we should be very fortunate to hear about the Srivatsa sign. It's very much there in Krishna Leela, and we can be very fortunate to understand that that sign is symbolic of Krishna's Vishnu Tattva. Then I did a brief analysis of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on this verse, because it's explained that the demon disappears. So we know that, the demon, he came to the realization that he wasn't going to win in this fight against Vishnu, against Krishna. So that's the reason for his disappearance, and then, or his going away. And then so we see when the demon disappears, he then sends forth all these ghosts. The rivers start flowing, rivers of blood, and pus comes out of the mountains, all this thing, and to try and bewilder Krishna Varahadev. But as we know, Krishna Varahadev cannot be bewildered, and he's completely above the modes of material nature. Daiviyesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya. These spiritual energy of mind consisting of the three material modes of nature are not only created by Krishna, but he's above them. So when we look at the Vaishnava tradition, we see that Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he had this great quality of being able to teach people. So in Sad Goswami Ashtakam of Srinivasacharya, we hear Nana Shastra Vichara-naika Vipuno Saddhamma Samshtakalo Lokanam Hitakarino Tribhuvane Manyo Sharanya Karo Vande Rupa Sanatana Raghuyugo Shri Jiva Gopalako. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami is very much one of those 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan who serve as the Shiksha Gurus in our Guru Parampara, as well as the glorious Srila Prabhupada, Bhakti Siddhanta Gaura Das Babaji, Bhakti Vinay Thakur, and Sarvabhauma Jagannath Babaji. So Gopal Bhatta Goswami was very much in that line of studying the Shastras, Nana Shastra Vichara-naika. So studying the Shastras for the benefit of all living entities, because he personally had the opportunity to serve Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for 4 months straight. During the Chatra Mas, Lord Chaitanya visited Venkata Bhatta's house, and so then they begged him, please Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, stay in our house for these 4 months and give us your association. So it was particularly the Mahaprasad. Lord Chaitanya was obviously 7 foot tall with arms down to his knees and this beautiful golden complexion, and he had a huge appetite, he had huge hands. Whenever he was distributing prasadam, he would give people 5 times the amount they could eat. That was the size from his own hand. They didn't used to have utensils, but then he would feed people 5 times what they could have. That was the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So Lord Chaitanya stayed in the house of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Gopal Bhatta Goswami had the great fortune of personally having the remnants of Lord Chaitanya. They also, being first-class Ramanujacharya Vaishnava Brahmanas, they washed and bathed Lord Chaitanya's feet every single day. And then Gopal Bhatta Goswami and his family had the great fortune of taking the Charanamrita of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so it's explained that it was this empowerment of Lord Chaitanya that helped the Ramanujacharya family to overcome their original conception of Lakshmi Narayana being God, and then so not so much love and adoration for Radha and Krishna. And so there's a beautiful conversation between Venkata Bhatta and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explaining the glories of Krishna. And he cites the example when Krishna disguises himself as Narayana. So after the Rasa Lila dance, Krishna goes to Govardhan Hill, and then he hears the gopis are chasing after him and trying to get his association. So he assumes this Narayana form. And so immediately when the gopis see Krishna in this Narayana form, they pay Dandavata obeisances and they shower their love and adoration upon Narayana, saying, please Narayana, we know you to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Grant us the benediction of Krishna's association. And so tears are streaming in their eyes. Please give us Krishna's association. And so Krishna still stayed in the Narayana form, even with all the gopis there, Lalita, Vishaka, Tungavidya, Sri Devi, Rangadevi, Champakalata, Indukleka, and all of the Ashtasakis were there, and Krishna still maintained his Narayana form. But immediately upon the presentation of Srimati Radharani, Krishna was no longer able of keeping this Narayana form. It's explained that Anubhav, or that Mahabhav of Srimati Radharani, that Prema Vaichitra, immediately melted Krishna's Narayana form, and he became the threefold bending form of Krishna again. So these are the conversations that Lord Chaitanya was personally telling to Venkata Bhatta, and then Venkata Bhatta had this great realization about Krishna becoming the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he didn't abandon his Ramanujacharya specific Shastric rituals and Brahmana rites, but he also added the worship of Radha Krishna, really desiring his entire life to get that understanding of Prema Madhurya, Rupa Madhurya, Leela Madhurya, and Venu Madhurya. So at a very young age, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, he left his parents' residential home and he went to Vrindavan. He took initiation from Prabodhananda Saraswati, his uncle. And when he performed when he moved to Vrindavan, he became a very dear friend of Rupa and Sanatan Goswamis. Now, it's explained that Gopal Bhatta Goswami was a very famous bhajananandi. So through intense bhajan over many hours every single day, over a long time, many years, it's explained 45 years in bhajan, mainly on the banks of Radhakund, developing this sense of worshipping Krishna through bhajan. So we're very fortunate to hear about these great stories, the great Goswamis of Vrindavan. It's interesting that Gopal Bhatta Goswami is not mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita or Chaitanya Mangala or even Chaitanya Bhagavat, because Gopal Bhatta Goswami had this real sense of being a hidden devotee or a Gupta. So what that meant was not all desiring to be heard, or so much so that if you read Hari Bhakti Vilas, it's written that Sanatan Goswami is the author, but in every single chapter is explained that Gopal Bhatta Goswami wrote this because he didn't have the desire to be well known or pratishta or famous or anything like that as a result of his association with Lord Chaitanya. So he had this, that's the sense that devotees come to. Essentially it's Lord Chaitanya's teaching, Nadanam Najanam Nasundarim, not looking for any followers, not looking for beautiful women or any fame or wealth or anything like that. Which brings us to the next point about Guru Purnima on Thursday. So we explained there's a beautiful photo that Giriraj Swami has of Srila Prabhupada worshipping Bhaktisiddhanta on Guru Purnima. So we know the lineage that we follow is the Brahma, Madhava, Gaudiya, Vaishnava Sampradaya. So essentially Krishna initiated Brahma, Brahma initiated Narada, and Narada initiated Vyasa. So Vyasa Purnima or Guru Purnima is the day that fell on Thursday. So we understand that Guru is a representative of Vyasadeva, and so he appears in our lives in order to help us to understand Krishna consciousness. So it's explained that if the Guru is the representative of Vyasadeva, and we know from Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sarvasya chaham ridi sanivishto matasmriti jnanam apohanam cha vedaischa sarve aham eva vedyo vedanta krid vedavid eva chaham. So Krishna is explaining, I am the knower of the Vedas, I've compiled the Vedas, so this is Krishna compiling the Vedas. So that's the mercy of the Guru, is to help us understand the Vedas, to help us understand the whole purpose of life. If we have Guru, then our life is perfect. We can know the absolute truth if we have a Diksha Guru. So essentially, Jiva Goswami writes in the Sandarbhas, there's 5 subject matters that the Guru explains. Firstly, it's Bhagavat Tattva, so the Supreme Personality of Godhead, helping us to teaching us about Krishna. So we can hear Bhagavad Gita, the words emanating from the lotus mouth of Krishna, but we need to have a Guru to guide us, to help us to understand it, so no thoughts of apasampradayas or aparads come up in our understanding. So it's the Guru who uproots those apasampradayic thoughts or those aparads. Also the Guru teaches about Bhagavat Tadiya Tattva. So this is the things related to Krishna. So the paraphernalia, or the Srivatsa mark, the Kaustuba gems, the meaning of the flute, the 5th note played on the flute, what that means. So everything related to about Krishna, this is the Bhagavat Tadiya Tattva. Thirdly, the Dharma Tattva. So this is the religious principles, the rituals. So the meaning behind practicing Narada Pancharatra, waking up in the morning, making sure we bathe Krishna every day. And on this point, it's really interesting because I was hearing Bir Krishna Goswami, because Prabhupada came and visited a temple once, and there was a situation where they weren't following the Mongol Aratis, they weren't changing the clothes of Krishna every day, they weren't putting them down in a bed every night, so they were missing a huge number of things. And Prabhupada came in and he said, Krishna's no longer in this temple. Like what, yes, has been installed with Nam Sankirtan, Pram Pratishta, but then Prabhupada chastised the devotees, Krishna's left, even though the form is left there. And this is that mood of being able to teach that we have to properly follow all the regulations in order to make sure that Krishna stays. So this is the Dharma Tattva. There's also Jiva Tattva, so truths pertaining to the living entity. We know that Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote that beautiful book, Jiva Dharma, which explains not only the Jiva but also Dharma Tattva. And finally, the mantra. So how to chant the mantra, how to become attentive. What should we be thinking of whilst we're chanting the mantra? So to alleviate thoughts that are taking us away from Krishna. And then so this mantra, how to chant the mantra, is the fifth thing that the Guru teaches us. So we know that Guru has Bhav and Prabhav. So that Bhav is explained as their eternal loving service to Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. So the Guru has that, and the Prabhav is the power and the influence. So as a result of associating with our Guru, serving our Guru, we can develop these same qualities of Bhav and Prabhav. So it's really interesting when you look at the Shiksha of Krishna himself. So Krishna acts as the Shiksha Guru of Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita, and he also acts as Uddhava's Shiksha Guru in the Uddhava Gita. So in Canto 11, there's 32 chapters, or 23 chapters, which outline the entirety of Bhagavad Shiksha. So every single instruction Krishna gave on detachment, yoga systems, opulences of the Lord, Varnashram Dharma, pure devotional service, Sankhya philosophy, deity worship, Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, all explained by Krishna to Uddhava in the Uddhava Gita. So as a result of receiving this tremendous amount of Shiksha knowledge from Krishna, Uddhava expressed a tremendous gratitude to Krishna for hearing this. He felt that he had an immense gift and he'd never be able to repay that gift to Krishna. And famously, we heard Bhakti Charu Swami on Srila Prabhupada's disappearance day. He was saying that he had felt this same thing. He would never be able to extinguish the debt to Srila Prabhupada as a result of the transcendental knowledge that he had received, as a result of the gifts he's received, as a result of being a devotee in ISKCON. So there's so much shiksha or instructions that the Guru gives, and it's explained that it's very important to understand the vapu is also important, the form, but the instructions are the most important. So by hearing about the Guru, by glorifying the Guru on the particular days, we can have that same mood of power and influence, and we can develop their same qualities of effulgence and their wonderful qualities. Now, just finally to end the class, we've all heard of Vraja Prabhu, who recently broke the record for 3,004 books distributed in a day. So it's interesting because he was quoting this reference to worshipping the Guru as a prime reason for that huge amount of books distributed in a day. 3,004 books distributed in a day, and he collected $16,000 in one day. So, Vraja Prabhu Ki Jai. So it's interesting, I had a one-on-one conversation, and he said what changed his life was he read a bona fide book in Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, The Life and Teachings of Madhvacharya. So he said it was that particular book, by worshipping Madhvacharya, that helped him to distribute so many different books. And he was saying the reason why is because Madhvacharya is Mukhya Pran, or an incarnation of Vayu. So he knows, he quoted Prabhupada saying, a dead man cannot preach. So what does a living man have? Life heirs. So these life heirs are coming from Madhvacharya, the incarnation of Vayu. So every time he was speaking to a person, he was begging Madhvacharya, please strengthen my life heirs so I can have an impact on this other fallen conditioned souls, and they would take a book. So he studied the life and times, the preaching of Madhvacharya, and then he referenced so many times of the skills that Madhvacharya had given him in overcoming not only his own weakness, but really getting those life airs flowing, understanding that Krishna is in the heart of every living entity, and just becoming an instrument rather than someone who's saying, this is me who's distributing the books. He became an instrument as a result of meditating on Madhvacharya. So lastly, just a short glorification of Bhakti Charu Swami, given that it was his disappearance day. And it's so many devotees were here declaring their love and adoration for Bhakti Charu Swami and saying about how much a profound impact he had on their life. And we could all see that in Bhakti Charu Swami. He had this tremendous effulgence. He had this tremendous love for Srila Prabhupada. He was always busy. Much in the sense of Jayapataka Swami saying, I'm too busy for Maya. So all of Prabhupada's senior men all had this sense of being very busy, rolling forward and doing so much in every day, declaring their love for Radha and Krishna and Srila Prabhupada. So Bhakti Charu Swami, we can take the dust of his lotus feet on our head and beg for his same mood of surrender and humility. And finally, coming to the understanding of what humility actually means is in Sharanagati of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. For someone to be completely surrendered, there has to be humility, there has to be enthusiasm, there has to be seeing Krishna as the sole maintainer. So not I have a boss, not I have a leadership structure, seeing Krishna as the sole maintainer, accepting that which is beneficial for our Krishna consciousness, rejecting that which is not beneficial for our Krishna consciousness. And so these are the aspects of surrender. So on that note, thank you so much, dear devotees. There is a Jagannath Ratha Yatra festival occurring in New Gokul Farm. So I wish blessings from everyone that we can sing loudly the glories of Lord Jagannath and hear wonderful Jagannath Katha on this divine day. So does anyone have a brief question or a comment or anything? Yes, Prabhu. Yeah. Okay, that's a great question. Thanks so much. So essentially, Prabhav is the power and the influence. So we saw that in Srila Prabhupada as the preeminent Shiksha Guru of everyone in ISKCON, the founder Acharya. So wherever he went, Prabhupada had this capacity of power and influence. So essentially what that means is, even when Prabhupada went to an industrialist's house, he went inside and he saw already inside this house was an altar. There was already peacocks painted on the walls. And so this man was asking for over $1 million for his house. And then Srila Prabhupada said to his disciples, you wait outside, I'll talk to him. And he managed to get the house for under $500,000, even though this house was worth well over $1 million. So this is the power and the influence of the Prabhav, because he's directly empowered by Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. Lord Nityananda is putting the words in his mouth to say those things to that industrialist who was actually a very greedy person. Being a very staunch businessman, he didn't ever give anything, a cent to anyone at all. And so Prabhupada was able to use his Prabhav, his power and influence, to overcome his desire to sell his house for a very high price. And Prabhupada got it for under $500,000. Now, this Bhav aspect of the Guru, we know that that's preliminary prema. So the way the Guru demonstrates this Bhav, it's the permanent mood of love of the Guru for Radha and Krishna. So as we heard, Gopal Bhatta Goswami is actually Guna Manjari in the spiritual world. So his Prabhav is his permanent love of Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan in a particular kunj, and so Guna Manjari will be able to demonstrate that. That's why there's so many different moods, because we go to Anangan Manjari, who's the younger sister of Srimati Radharani. Her bhav is different from Guna Manjari's bhav. For instance, even Srila Prabhupada's bhav is different from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's. A lot of similarities, but also differences, highlighted by that example where Ayindra Prabhu cited. Prabhupada was asked the question, what musical instruments are there in the spiritual world? And Srila Prabhupada said, mridanga, kartals, and a little harmonium. So this is Srila Prabhupada's direct bhav. So the way he worships Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan and Radharani is through those three musical instruments. But then when we go deeper into the